looking at these blokes now, they all look older than me. But I would never, ever swap these teammates for anybody. I don't care who we're talking about. I've played against the best in the world. Luckily, because of the boss, because of my teammates, we went somewhere where nobody would believe of going. Georgie Best made a statement in America. I was there, and he said, I would have loved to have played in the World Cup and everything like that. And I said, well, you needed to turn up for your national team, to make it, to try and qualify. The best times, the best support of anybody was still best of mates. You try and show me now any other Australian soccer team, any national team, and they're all mates still, and they're ringing each other up. And you've got the boss who rings us up everybody once a month and everything like that. This is the one, will be forever. That's it. We're the best.
Hold on, Noddy.
Get on you, Noddy. Get on you.
Jim Fraser played with Polonia and St George in the old state league. Was in the 70 and the 74 World Cup teams. And then I've been coaching ever since.
Doug Utjesenovic. I come to Australia in 1969 to Fuskar UST. I got naturalized 1972, and since then until 76, I played all games for the eliminations for the World Cup 74, and also for the preparation for the 77 World Cup, but 78 World Cup in Argentina. But then I got injured 1976, and my international career was finished. After that, I had a few coaching stints mainly with the clubs from New South Wales Premier League.
I came to, as Jimmy Rooney, I came to Australia in 1968 and played for a team in Victorian State League. From there, when I was at Apted, Rale picked me, and from there, the best time of my life as a footballer, trying to qualify for the 74 World Cup finals, and fortunately enough, we were successful. And it was a great part of my career as a footballer. Baartz.
Thanks a lot, Jim. I'm Ray Baartz. Yep. I guess I was born in, I was born in Newcastle, New South Wales, and grew up into a soccer mad or football mad town, and in around Adamstown, you had two alternatives if you wanted to play sport. You played soccer in winter, and you played cricket in summer, and that was it. We had no option. Had a couple of years at Manchester United as a teenager, 17 and 18 years of age. Came back to Adamstown for another season, then was transferred to Sydney Harcoa, where I remained for the rest of my career. Was selected the first year I was in Sydney to play for Australia against Scotland in 1967, and was fortunate to remain in the national team until the end of my career in early 1974. At 27 years of age, was injured against Uruguay just prior to the World Cup, and never had the pleasure of playing in the World Cup finals with all the boys, but played all the qualifying games and have a lot of great memories from that.
Are you ready for me now, are we?
Yes, sure.
That's it, end of the show.
I arrived in Australia in 1968, January 28th. I was actually playing youth grade for Preston North End, but they said I was far too small. I was nothing like my brother, who played alongside the great Tom Finney. And I said, well, I am nothing like my brother. I said, because I can dribble, I can run with the ball and everything like that. He was just fast, and he was a good header of the ball as well, by the way. But he didn't have my technique. So anyway, to move on from there, I came to Australia. I said to my girlfriend, who I'm now married to for 52 years, I said, they've given me a good offer. I'm going to go, and we'll see how it is. So anyhow, within a few months, I brought her over, and I said, for one season, we'll be back at the end of the year. However, in that time, things happened with New South Wales, and so we got married, and she didn't see her family for 6 years.
I arrived to 1962. I played with Footscray for 2 seasons in 64. After the Beatles visited Australia, I returned back to do certain home duties, one of whom was national service, and 2 to finish university or work in a factory. So I opted for the second, to finish university rather than work in a factory. So came back 1966, 1970. I was at 34 years of age appointed national coach.
None of the boys here, none of us were involved in the qualification for the 66 World Cup finals, but, you know, what we put up with in 1970 and the travel that we did, you know, to get as close as what we did was a Herculean effort. But I think we learnt from that, and it showed with our preparation for the 1974 World Cup, where we played a lot of games at home. We played early. We played Indonesia, New Zealand, and Iraq in a tournament in Sydney and Melbourne, and from there it was home and away against Iran and South Korea. So it was a lot more balanced preparation, and I'm sure Raleigh benefited by what the boys went through in 1970 and certainly learnt by it. And, you know, even though they were hard games, made it a lot easier for us to achieve success.
Can I just make a point there? Because, you know, when we played the game in Israel, we had 3 or 4 people out sick. Remember, the flu went through the camp, so we didn't have our best team on, and we got beat 1-0. But when we come back to Sydney, they actually sent us home. They didn't put us into camp, if you remember.
That's right.
And Uncle Joe, lovely guy and a great coach, that happened. And because Arthur Drew said we hadn't got the money to put us into camp, so we went home, and then we came back on the match day. And I think the big difference was when Raleigh came in. If that had happened when Raleigh came back and they said we're going home, he would have put us into a motel and paid the bill himself and argued with the management. But Uncle Joe, it was a different time, so there was a transformation into coaching styles and preparation, and, you know, it was just a big thing. And everybody said nice things about you tonight, Raleigh, but I still think you're a bastard for selling me to Canterbury for $300. That was a bloody insult.
Congratulated for that. Good money. That was a massive step. As Jim Fraser said, team arrives from Israel. I would throw the bomb on FFA if they wouldn't let me to go into the camp with the team to qualify for the World Cup. And I think that is, as Jim said, a massive, massive mistake. You are just one goal away from the World Cup, and the team was not allowed to go to the camp. But you must be committed to 3 times a day, not 3 times a week. And this is what no one ever recorded, how these wonderful people achieved that phenomenal success. Because I coached the team for 4 years on a part-time basis. And these people committed themselves to me and the nation on full-time basis. Whenever they were called into the camp, whenever they called to train 3 times a day, there was never no. And that is a secret of these people's success.
Football in Australia can mean any one of 4 distinctive codes: Australian rules, rugby league, rugby union, and soccer. These soccer players in Australia's national strip of gold and green are known as the Socceroos, and in the space of 14 months, they've waltzed their way into the finals of the World Football Championship in West Germany. To qualify as winners of their Asian group, Australia's World Cup team played a total of 11 matches. Their opponents, Iraq, Indonesia, New Zealand, Iran, and South Korea.
The early stage of the qualifying against New Zealand and Indonesia and Iraq, we probably started off a little bit slowly with a draw in New Zealand against New Zealand, but the games in those days against New Zealand were always hard. You know, they would never give anything, and you know, even though we were probably the better team, they made life difficult for us. As the tournament progressed against those countries, we you know, certainly improved. I ended up being Iraq 3-0, I think, and 6-1 or 6-0, 6-0 against Indonesia in the second game. So, you know, in the end, we won the tournament quite comfortably, and then of course onto the home and away games, Iran.
Yeah, I remember obviously the home game. We were all in camp, and it's like, as you said, you know, with the boss, he was always this attitude of not arrogant, but always super confident with us, and he definitely lifted us up to be able to do that for sure, you know, without a doubt, and being able to win that game 3-0 and deservedly so as well. And you know, I was lucky enough to score one, Otti and Peter Wilson. We went to the away leg. I think it was 119,000, if I'm not mistaken, 119,000, and I was shit. So the boss, being the boss, just said to me at half time, "Get off. That's it." Max Tolson came on and he kicked their ass, and we ended up, you know, winning the game. He was right. I was shit. I don't know what it was. It's the first time ever, by the way. But I was already top. I was already top scorer anyhow for the qualifiers, so it didn't really matter.
Just on that game, if one thing really says about the team spirit that this team had, before the game, it was very difficult because the crowd were very boisterous and it was very intimidating. And I remember just before they played the national anthem, looking along the line, and our body language wasn't good, and that was the first time I'd ever seen that. And I thought, oh, we're in trouble here. But the national anthem played, and by the end of the national anthem, everybody's body language had changed. And I just looked along and I thought, we're going to be all right here. We're going to go through. And it was just a significant point. I don't know whether anybody else noticed it, but I certainly did. It was like something from a movie, you know, where you're in this situation and the players' body language just changed because of the national anthem and the bond between us. And it was difficult. We're down 2-0 and everybody fought like hell. There was one really funny thing from that. About 10 minutes before the end, there was a break in play. I think Ray Richards got hit on the head by something, and he went down. I think he was wasting time. And I looked over and I thought, this isn't a good place to be, because I was at the far end of the pitch and the home crowd was aware that they might not be going through to the World Cup, so they got pretty boisterous. And I looked around and Peter Wilson was standing with the ball, bouncing the ball in the penalty area and catching it and singing. I thought, that's cool, Peter. With all the intimidation going on, Peter just didn't care. He was just having a good time.
Rale, did not trust them very much. And he took even our own steaks, you know, to Iran. and we had for breakfast steak, for lunch steak, and for dinner steak, you know, because he always say, I can't believe this bastard, you know. And Iranian being smart, when we got to the airport, they wouldn't release the meat for us. You know? It was a big argument and all these things. And as I said, was a really, again, that was probably one real positive things for us, one real win. And I never forget how these Iranian people were so passionate, you know. They had, in the last seconds of the game, they had a really good chance, you know, striker, you know, Mazlumi, very good in there, had a shot and he just missed, you know, probably not even half a meter, you know, goal. Fellow photographer left the camera, he left behind the goal, he ran and picked up the ball just to speed up the game, to restart the game. And you could see he was a really strong Iranian fellow with a big mustache, and you can see teardrops coming from his eyes, you know. That was really touched me so much, you know, to see, you know, show you how much those people, you know, Iranian or especially this Arabian country, they were so passionate about the football, and how much they love their own country, and as I said, that's probably, if you ask me, that was hardest game which I ever played, Iranian game.
We'd had quite a history against South Korea for probably the last 6 or 7 years, starting from the final in Saigon in 1967, then the World Cup qualifying games in Korea in 1969, and each time we sort of had their measure, so that but they'd all been hard and they'd all been close games, so we knew that it wasn't going to be easy, but we knew we were capable of beating them. The first game was in Sydney, and tremendous expectation on the team on those games, a lot of pressure, and sometimes on those games you want more than you can give, and sometimes you have those days where you're a little bit flat, and probably that was one of the performances that we didn't sort of play at our best. We had a 0-0 draw in Sydney, which wasn't too bad, but it wasn't what we would have liked to have to go to Seoul for the return, and we knew that once we got to Korea, it was certainly going to be difficult. The game over there was difficult. It was freezing cold. It was almost snowing, and we were out of season. I think it was November, was it, Raleigh, when we played the return games over there at that time of the year. So it was summer here, and we're going into the middle of their winter, and we were down 2-0 at half time, and backs to the wall, and at no stage do we ever think we were out of it, and we got back to 2-2. I think I scored the equaliser, and in those days the away goal rule didn't apply. If it did apply, that goal would have been sufficient to take us through to Germany. However, the game ended 2-2, and as you said before, Chris, that it was decided then that there'd be a third and deciding game played on a neutral venue, which was Hong Kong. So off we go the next day to Hong Kong. The South Korean team was on the same plane as us going to Hong Kong, and we were laughing and joking, and they were all down and despondent because they thought they'd done enough to qualify, leading 2-0, and they were home and hosed. However, we were quite the opposite. We were buoyant, and everyone's cracking jokes and one thing or another. So I think it was a psychological win for us to travel to Hong Kong on the same plane as them and to express our mood compared to their mood. And of course, the game in Hong Kong went our way. And even though it was 1-0, it was probably a game that, 2 or 3 would have been a true indication of the game. We dominated that game completely, I thought.
Peter Wilson is coming down in his direction, headed to Rooney. A shot coming in. Oh, great goal! Oh, it was Mackay, wasn't it? Jimmy Mackay!
Just on that goal, for all of us, it was the best goal it's ever been. And then they had a competition, the best goal of the century in Australia. And the winner was a penalty kick. Put that beside Jimmy Mackay's goal. There's no comparison,
No.
That's followed today.
Correct. I think what we should remember is we beat the champions of Asia, we beat the champions of the Middle East, we beat the champions of Oceania. We talk about Gus Hiddink and his team that made the final 16. There was one qualifying team, one out of all of those areas, one team only. And we were already in the final 16. That was the final 16. They only invented 32 games later on so that a team could reach the top 16. We had to go through all that. And I think Baartz is right there. By getting that result in Korea, it really showed all the tough games, away to Iran, holding on there, then going to Korea and doing that. And of course, the famous Jimmy Mackay goal and everything like that. And it was thoroughly deserved. It should have been about 3. But everybody, sort of talks about teams now because everybody is younger. Everybody who watches the game, the younger people, they don't know we exist. But the first is best. We qualified 16 teams only. And what we went through and having to do that, supposedly part-time players, but the boss said he turned us into bloody professionals. We had to act like professionals. Anything. There's a couple of stories which I won't go into, but if anybody didn't do the right thing in our squad, guess what? They're not in next time. You've gone.
Australia surprised the world by beating Uruguay at the Sydney Cricket Ground. A goal down, Uruguay were quick to counter-attack. A corner on the left, and then a cross into the goal mouth that seemed to spell danger. But an intercept by Baartz quickly restored the balance. A long ball for Ollerton, and the Uruguayan keeper, straying too far upfield, is stranded. Ollerton rounds him in a flash, and Uruguay's fate is sealed. Australia 2, Uruguay 0.
You know, for us to beat a quality team like Uruguay 2-0 before we went to the World Cup, we were in pretty good stead, and we were very confident to go to the World Cup and put on a good showing. However, after the game, I started to feel quite ill. Went home that night, couldn't move or the left side of my body. What had happened, they weren't only a good football team, but they were a very aggressive team as well. I was sort of playing a midfield role in that game and picked up the ball on our 18-yard line just prior to half-time. One of their players was running alongside me, and instead of throwing his arm across my chest to stop me from running past him, he sort of threw it out in a karate-type motion that connected across my throat. I went down. I was sort of choked. You know, recovered enough to go in at half-time, and Dr. Brian Corrigan sort of treated me with some Aspros and whatever in those days. Played the second half and had no after effect from that blow. It connected with my carotid artery, and the artery swelled over a period of time, and as a result, I virtually had a stroke. And after 2 weeks in hospital, Brian Corrigan, the doctor, said, "Ray," he said, "you're a very lucky boy. We didn't know if you were going to make it, let alone to regain all your faculties, and I'm advising you now not to play again. We don't know, you know, how another blow to the throat would affect the artery. The slightest blow could be fatal." So at 27 years of age, my career was over. But on the same token, I was very lucky that I wasn't dead or in a wheelchair.
Can you imagine if Germany lost Gerd Müller or Franz Beckenbauer month before the tournament? Can you imagine if Cruyff did not play for Holland in the tournament? Baartz to us was a power, was image, was belief, was his mobility was unique. He did not have to play in a penalty box. He could score from anywhere that you needed.
Well, you cost us the World Cup.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, I could have ducked.
You could have won that.
Funny story, because at one stage I said, the next person that asked me that, about that, I'm going to sit them right on their ass. And the next week I was up in Newcastle, Baartz. It was only about 6 or 7 years ago when you were involved with the Jets. And we got up there and you got me up before the match and you said, "Why didn't you go to Germany?" I thought, "Baartz, I can't hit you." Of all the people I'm going to build, it wouldn't be Baartz. I had a security business. I was in partnership with a guy who put some money into the company. We had 150 employees, and every time we went overseas, the business lost money. And he said, "If you go, I'll see you'll lose your house." And that wasn't the biggest thing. The biggest thing was that my wife was continually under pressure all the time I was away. And also the fact that out of the 150 guys, we're almost in recession in the building industry at the time. And we had 5 big sites under pressure, and about 60 people were going to lose their job if I went. But it's something that's affected me my whole life since.
Sepp Maier, you know, all the other players I've played against, Gordon Banks, Peter Shilton, so on and so on. And I said, Jimmy Fraser is the best goalkeeper I've played with or against, because he was with Polonia when I first arrived and stuff like that. But if you just stand up, Jimmy, a bit taller, and you're right. However, saying that, you know, let's be honest, Jack Riley's an excellent keeper. So, I mean, as far as the results go, I don't think it would have made that that much of a difference result-wise. But it's once again, you know, you lose somebody who is there all the time, you're so reliant on, and then all of a sudden the change comes, you know. Baartz here, this, and then Jimmy and all that. And for the boss to be able to carry on and try and organise straight away, quickly, something else. You know, these different formations for who we played against.
Team coach Rale Rasic discussing tactics with German-born iron defender Manfred Schaefer. Stylish right-back Doug Utjesenovic works as a storeman. The smallest member of the squad, and a Scot, Jimmy Rooney. In the white tracksuit, Adrian Alston. And the player injured against Uruguay, who won't be playing in Germany, Baartz. The message would seem to be abundantly clear. Tell the world and Germany the Socceroos are coming.
The boss had, his preparation was second to none. You'd walk in the dressing room, training, everything like that. He'd have players' names, pictures on the wall. He does this, he plays left side, he plays here. Just explaining everything to us, all about their players. Great preparation. We knew what to expect. So when you're walking on to play against East Germany or something like that, we just never thought it's any different than playing against whoever we've played before, you know, in the qualifiers.
So a big moment for the Socceroos from Australia as they kick off in their first match here in Hamburg against East Germany.
We were well prepared. We did everything right and everything like that. And it was just unlucky that they scored right on the death of the first half. If we'd gone in 0-0, I'm convinced we'd have got something out of that game. I'm convinced.
Oh, hard lines on the man who nearly got it off the line, but Fraser has scored for East Germany.
People didn't expect much from us. Like, you know, we were there like outsiders, but the same token, I think we went really good, you know, all games. So I'm a bit disappointed that we couldn't get a better result against East Germany.
This Vogel. Oh, what a superb goal!
East Germany, we were on their level, probably their fitness, and then, and experience. And don't forget those teams like East Germany, they for 12 months, they never lost any game.
And a bad clearance. Shot was by Warren, but the Australians are rapidly getting the neutrals in this crowd on their side.
That 2-0 defeat was one of the best results by an Australian soccer team. At that level, you know, and when we went on the park, there was no fear, as the lads have said already. It was just excitement, you know, and you sort of couldn't wait to get the ball, but at the same time, you know, they were one of the best teams in the world, as along with West Germany. And we were out there just to enjoy ourselves, trying to win, but it was a big hurdle. But at the same time, when you look at the result in history, it wasn't too bad, believe me.
Oh, and a pity it wasn't a bit stronger. Buljevic didn't give it enough pace, where Alston was waiting just behind him.
And by the way, the Johan Cruyff turn, it's the Alston turn, 5 days before Johan Cruyff. Now, everybody have a look at it.
Well, we knew they supported their cricketers, but listen to this crowd for the footballers. Alston again. Foul was by Fraser.
And it's a fact. And anyhow, later on, they told me his roommate, Cruyff's roommate, 5 days, he's watching it on TV, and he said, I think I can do that. Only because they got to the final did they notice him. But I played every night before I go to bed, don't worry.
There's the final whistle, so East Germany goes to the top of Group 1, having beaten Australia by 2-0. But this was the story of a tremendous resistance by the Australians. The Socceroos from Australia proved tonight that they're very definitely not here just for the ride.
Looking at players from West Germany was different than looking from East Germany, because at least the West Germany players, we knew them. You know, he didn't need to tell us quite as much, but once again, we had all the list, we knew who was playing where, and the positional sense and all that carry on. But before the game, we got off the bus and they were already warming up. And I remember I said to Peter Wilson, they'll be knackered. you know, we've only just arrived and they're actually warming up. So anyhow, everybody went to the dressing room. So I took off and did a left turn, and I went and I saw Beckenbauer, and he came past, and I said, "Hey, France," I said, "swap shirts after the game." And he said, "What number are you?" I said, "Don't worry, I'll be standing next to you the whole game." So anyway, cut a long story short, it happened after the game we finished, and I've got a picture where Peter Wilson is grabbing him by the arm to say swap shirts, and he's got a look on his face as if to say, "Nah, I want Noddy Alston shirt for sure."
Chilean team has incredible, impeccable impact on every World Cup they participated in over the last 50 years.
It was a real battle, you know, and the water was, you know, lying on the ground and the balls. It was difficult conditions to play in, but I don't think we were really ever threatened there. I thought we should have won. It was a game we should have won, and I think we were a bit unfortunate not to get a win. But you know, it was one of the games. It was the break of the ball a lot. We were waiting on, you know, so it was just really, it was none of us could have qualified because the two German teams had qualified already. So it was wasn't friendly, but at the same time, we were quite comfortable playing at that level in that game.
Brief correction: if West Germany, which was predicted that will beat East Germany by 2-0, result Chile against Australia, was placed $8,000 per player, Chilean player, for beating Australia by 2 goals. This is how little media knows in Australia, because like David Jack wrote, he said we couldn't even score against Chile. And Chile on $8,000 per man to beat us by 2 goals or more. So till last minute, that game was so important because all South American media predicted that East Germany will lose to West Germany. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
I think, you know, every Australian thought that, yes, you went in the World Cup. Yes, you went there in last 16, but you didn't win because they thought, you know, like that's like a rugby league, or even Aussie Rules didn't play well, but something like that, or rugby union, and they thought Australians going as a favorite, especially before we went to World Cup. We were nobodies, like nobody knew about us. Yes, it was a report, but what Rale said, wasn't much media report. Really, you don't have that impression that football is, you know, it's such a big game, you know, which Australians still today, they don't realize, average Australians don't realize how big is football around the world, man.
The history says that we were a part of the success of soccer now, football now.
Of course.
You know, because 3 years later, we created the National League, which was a step in the right direction. And then eventually it was the A-League.
Yeah.
But again, we were still competing against the AFL and Rugby League. But at the same time, we were progressing. But it was difficult to compete with the crowds that they're getting and with the way that Australia is. But at the same time, we've come a long way in all the time I've been here.
Jimmy, I think
What do you think?
I think there was a tremendous lot of public interest in the World Cup, in our achievements in qualifying and playing in the World Cup. However, as soon as the World Cup was over, that momentum just was allowed to wane. There was nothing done to promote the players, to promote the game or whatever. And then the National League was formed 2 years later, as you said. So you had to try and rebuild, you know, what was created 2 years previous instead of following on with the momentum and keeping the ball rolling. And that was the biggest problem, I think. And create personalities out of the players and promote the players and promote the game. And, you know, we just didn't have that knowledge or that ability to do that in those days. We didn't have the staff there at FFA to do it, and you had to rely on the media to do it. And the media was only allocated a certain amount of space in the paper or whatever to do, and they could only do what, you know, with what they had to work with. So it was a hard situation.
We should look our own house. Our sport is green and gold worldwide. Our pride is national flag of Australia. Our pride is green and gold. That's what we should be really enforcing. And I don't think so that any Socceroos would ever let you down when it's question of green and gold. It's such a strong brand. It's such a powerful weapon that brings really goosebumps out of anybody when you mention green and gold. That's a power. And when you think that we had different nationalities in one unit called Australia, so proud of green and gold, it is so powerful, so symbolic, that we, all of us, should be promoting. Would it be Matildas? Would it be Socceroos? Would it be whatever age group is, that fanatism of that power becomes really focused. And I'm very much into national pride, because during my time, the national anthem was a power. During my time was that 6 different nationalities are thinking as one, feeling as one, and being sincere about what we feel about our land and our commitment to it.
When I got picked, I didn't realise until I put the shirt on that I was Australian. I was Australian. That was it. I just changed completely. And now everybody that I talk to, the only thing English about me is my accent. That's it. The rest is I'm an Aussie, and I'm very, very proud to be.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Good to catch up with everybody again. And you haven't aged one little bit, you blokes. You still look as good as what you did before. So hang in there.
Yeah, but I'm a 72-year-old sex symbol, mate.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, send my thanks. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for a great night.
Thank you.
YouTube, the Alston turn. Everybody's going to look at it now. It takes 30 seconds. Thank you.